Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Tracy Shroyer, and I want to make sure that this is working okay. Make sure the quality of the video is coming out okay. So give me just a second here. Sometimes it takes a minute to connect into LinkedIn, but you get to hear the recording even while it's doing that. So let's see. And life be life and over here in the Shroyer household, so the dogs you may hear them, you may see them. Okay, we are good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Would love for you, if you are listening, give me a hashtag live or hashtag replay in the comments or in the chat. I believe I should be able to see that. It's on a little bit different screen than where I'm looking. And let me make sure that you can see my screen. That would help, right? Okay. There we go. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to bring you this first session of Pink Slip Prep School. This is a program that I have put together. I'm very passionate about helping individuals to make sure that you're being proactive and prepared versus being in a panic if something were to happen to your job and the role that you hold in your organization or in your industry. So hello, I am Dr. Tracy Shroyer. I am really glad that you're here, whether it's out of curiosity, it's concern, or because maybe you're navigating a tough season. I want you to know that you are not alone, and this space and this program was created for you. So, I created Pink Slip Prep School because after spending 27 years in the corporate world, climbing the ladder, going across I call it the jungle gym, not the corporate ladder, climbing across the jungle gym, down and up, and all of that, getting recognized, leading high impact initiatives, and developing teams and learning programs, I was laid off. Very unexpectedly for me, after that 27 years, got on a call one morning and found out my role was being eliminated in addition to other people on my team. I've also done career coaching for over 11 years. I have been a teacher in the college sense, adjunct faculty member for over 5 years, and no, that was in one location. Over 10 years, just finished my 11th year teaching and my first year teaching full time. I'll share a little bit more about that here in a moment. So, when my own layoff happened in the fall of 2023, I wasn't someone who's new to change. Some people even find it intriguing that I had studied layoffs as part of my dissertation process and did a lot of that in 2011, 2012, wrapped it up in early 2013, wrote a book about managing layoffs in 2017, and that's available on Amazon. But being affected and being laid off myself when that happened, that really it knocked the wind out of me. Even with all the experience, with all the research I've done, I really felt stuck and I had so many thoughts. One was, what just happened? What do I do now? Am I still valuable? It's a huge hit to your ego for sure. And then I realized that I needed to take my own advice. I had spent so many years coaching individuals through job search, through transitions, through layoffs, and now it was time for me to walk that talk for myself. That experience has completely reshaped how I view career security. And I realized that there was a huge gap in the support, not just for people who have already been laid off, but for those who may be or who sense something is shifting in the organization, in their industry, and they don't know what to do. So, again, going back to making sure you're prepared and you're proactive versus being panicked if something does happen. It's better to be prepared. So, this course is all about making sure that you have clarity, you have confidence, and you have some practical strategies to help get you prepared and be prepared and not to panic. So this session one, is free. I anticipate for Pink Slip Prep School, I am building it as I go, but I have developed out the curriculum to be about 7 sessions, and those should be 45 minutes to an hour each. And I wanted to provide session one for free and to all of you so you can get a glimpse into what my style is for teaching and sharing and coaching, and also insight into what some of the content is all about. I believe very strongly that everyone deserves access to this foundation, and that's another reason why I wanted to offer that for free. If this resonates with you, and if you want to continue learning, reflecting, preparing, I'm going to invite you at the end to join me for the remaining 6 sessions, and I'll share how you can get more insight into how to do that. So whether you continue on or not, I really hope today brings you more peace, more power, and more clarity than you had when you first got here. So we are going to go ahead and get started. All right, so a little bit about me that I want to share. So I've shared a lot of this already in my opening here, but so I am a lifelong learner in all aspects of the term, the concept. I had gone through all of schooling. I think I spent 16, 17 years within college as a student. I was kind of like that career student, I guess you'd say. So I got my bachelor's in English, my master's in business administration, my PhD in management, specializing in leadership. And then 5 years later, I went back, thankful to the organization that I worked for that gave a huge tuition reimbursement or tuition support there. I got a master's in science in industrial organizational psychology. I had mentioned to you in my PhD program, I researched layoffs. I researched those from the manager's perspective and how they look at preparing and kind of deciding whether to do downsizing. Sometimes those managers, more often than not, if they weren't at that like CEO level or that executive level, the decision had already been made and they had to make other decisions. I also looked at implementation of the layoffs and then also managing in the aftermath of the layoff. And some of those individuals I spoke to were with the organization afterwards and managed the organization afterwards. Some of them, and a few of them, were actually the last ones to walk out the door and close that behind them and be done with whether the organization was closing or their department was closing. I then also wrote in the past year or so, I wrote several journals that are available also on Amazon. The Ultimate Job Search Journal, which you could probably see maybe behind me, is my book, Managing Layoffs, and then the Ultimate Job Search Journal. This is more of a workbook look and feel, and for you to track not only your networking, who you meet along the way, but to track the job applications that you have, and then also to track information about interviews and different things like that. So very, very helpful. And I've known a few people who have already gotten it and they ended up putting some like small post-it notes to keep track of some things on the side too. And so those are all available and several other journals that you can see on the screen. I did spend 27 years in corporate. I was in financial services industry. The last 10 years of my time there was spent on learning and development roles, never in HR, always in either operations, product, technology, any of those types of areas. And typically it was either spinning up or kind of taking over for somebody who may have spun up or platforms and different things related to learning and development for the organization and those internal employees. I mentioned to you I was laid off in the fall of 2023. Spent over 10 years teaching, mainly management, communications, done a couple things related to marketing, also HR. And I'm celebrating over 11 years as a career coach and helping individuals, whether it's looking for a shift and transition in their career, typically mid-level professionals, or it's somebody who has been laid off and they're looking to figure out what's next for me. Is that another role like I had? Is that something completely different? Is it just a different organization, different industry? Is it something completely different? Like instead of going back to a corporate kind of role, I want to be an entrepreneur. And what does that path look like? And how do I go from there? So with that, I just want to share a little bit more about this course specifically before we jump into the first session, insights and information that I want to share, which is about external and internal signals that something could be happening and that layoffs might be imminent, whether it's in your industry or your organization. So first off, a couple things about this course. So I want to share first, what is this course? First off, I want to share this course is not about fear. It's not about inducing panic, anything like that. I am definitely not here to stir up anxiety, make you feel like the sky is falling. I've lived through a layoff. I've also seen how many people sense that something's shifting at work, but they feel frozen because they don't want to overreact. And that's where this course comes in. So it's not doom and gloom. It's a space to feel grounded and empowered and informed. And it's about taking back control, your control. If we think about what can I control, what can I control, if you've ever seen that graphic, before a decision is made for you. So definitely being proactive, being prepared and not being paranoid or panicked. So if today speaks to you and you want tools, strategies, guided reflection to feel ready instead of being rattled, then the next 6 sessions are going to go deeper into that journey and share even more. And I'll share in the last slide on this training what more is going to be included in those sessions. So reach out to me if you want more information or you have questions. I also have services related to resume writing, LinkedIn optimization, all of those types of things as well. So let's cover too what this course is not. So this course is absolutely not a one-size-fits-all solution. Trying to figure out a solution like that to give to you would probably be hours upon hours and still not touch every single thing. And because individuals' situations can be so complex, there's going to be a lot of discernment for you to pick and choose what you need to take from this training based on what applies in your situation, whether it's for you personally, your organization, your industry, anything like that. Also, this course is absolutely not legal or financial advice. I will share different tips, tricks, best practices that I have gathered from others and myself, but it is in no way telling you this is what you should do, this is what you need to do, this is what like requiring you to do. That is completely on you, and I highly, highly recommend that you seek any kind of legal support or financial support, a financial advisor, or whoever that might be in that financial world. I consulted an attorney myself to look through some things when I had gotten laid off, so absolutely recommend those resources. I am not that. I am very smart. I am not that. Um, Also, this is not a guarantee against challenges. Regardless of how much you prep and prepare and think that you would know what to do when that day comes, similar in my experience with breast cancer and that diagnosis and what you need to do from there, you don't know until you're in that position, until that you actually get on a call and you get those words and you find out what's happening. Or like in my case with breast cancer, you get that diagnosis, like what decisions you're going to make from there. So you're definitely going to have challenges. You're going to have ups and downs. It's definitely a roller coaster. I did another presentation for a conference where we talked about the 5 stages of grief and involuntary terminations, such as layoffs. So definitely going to face some challenges, and this is not going to eliminate those 100%. So one thing I want to touch on also before we jump into that first session is reframing. So you've heard me talk a little bit about this is preparation, this is planning, this is being proactive, this is not being paranoid, this is not being filled with fear, anything like that. So what I ask you now is I want you to take a deep breath and imagine what it would feel like to have peace of mind in your career, even in times that are uncertain. That's really what I had to do. I had to really stop, take a breath, really think and reflect. And when I started seeing signals that something was shifting at work, I had a choice. I could live in fear, or, and I like this analogy, I could use that fear as fuel. Now, one of the things I will tell you before we get into some of those warning signals, especially internal warning signals, is that there are signals. There are signals popping up left and right for a lot of individuals and a lot of organizations. And so many times, me included, we don't pay attention to it. Maybe we're naive to it. Maybe we're thinking, oh, well, that's different. Or not for me. Like, that's different. That's not going to affect me. That's not going to impact me. Or I'm a leader and that would only affect employees and that kind of thing. So, what I want you to do is I want you to really reframe that fear doesn't mean that you're pretending everything's okay. It basically means saying, I see this and I choose to prepare. I choose to plan. I choose to be proactive because I know that I am more powerful in that way. Preparation is something that is really self care, and it's a way to honor your future self and to build that insurance or that protection for that future self into what could happen down the road. So when I talk about preparing yourself and planning, you can think of this course as career insurance. A lot of times we get insurance to prepare in case something happens, in case we get in a car accident, in case there's a house fire, in case, whatever that might be. So this is career insurance, and I say not in a boring policy kind of way, but it's something that you really hope that you don't need, but you're really grateful that you have it if something unexpected happens. Just like you are with some of your other insurance. You may not be reading left, front and back, all the fine details of an insurance policy, but you're grateful that you have it, that you know the basics of it, and that, if something happens, that it's there to protect you. So think of this course as that for you as well. So in the early days after my layoff, I will tell you, I kept thinking, I am so glad that I'm a career coach and that I have my resume ready. I have a support system. I have people that worry about me, that care about me, that are checking in on me, that have even given me recommendations, people that I worked with before. And I was so grateful that I had done some work up front to figure out what mattered most to me. I had already identified, here are the values that I hold close to me. Here are the deal breakers. Here are the actual things that I want in a career role if I was to go from here and do something else. Granted, it doesn't mean I didn't have to relook at any of that when I got that news. It doesn't mean I didn't have that fear, some fear in me when I got that news, but I had set up a good foundation. So it was tweaking what I had already started to build versus trying to create it from scratch when I got the news and being reactive to what the news was. When we are unprepared, we really can start to spiral. And you can give me a like, you can say yes in the comments in the chat if that's you. But when we're prepared, we can respond a lot better. And this doesn't mean that the day after, if you were to get laid off, that you're going to bounce back and you're going to be able to get a job like that. Some people, yes, absolutely. Sometimes it's luck. Sometimes it just happened to work out that way. Um, but often that's not the case. Right now, it's taking individuals 5, 6 months, if not more, depending on the type of role that they're looking for in an organization at like a mid-level professional type of role. So it can be a long process. And we want to make sure that we protect our energy, we focus on what are the things that we need to do, and we take back our story and who we are, what we value, what we're good at, and where we want to go from here. And so today I want you to really start to shift that lens from that dread and that fear to more being ready, having a plan of action. What can you do? Because even small actions like being here today or listening to this today are investments in your future career security and what you can do as a result tomorrow. So I'm going to be honest with you, and I think I kind of gave notion to this before. When I went through my layoff, I wasn't fully prepared. I didn't have a step-by-step plan. I did not see it coming, despite people even telling me in the days leading up to it that it was happening. I was very naive to that. Didn't think it could happen to me. Didn't think it had happened to my team, all of that kind of thing. I had impacts emotionally, mentally, even physically. What I learned in the aftermath, though, is resilience isn't about having everything figured out in advance. It's about being able to respond when the world shifts around you. So I can't remember what that quote is exactly, but it's like, it's not the what happens to you, it's how you react to what happens to you, and it's about what you do next. So I didn't expect for that to happen, but I did learn how to reclaim a sense of control, to get back up on my feet, and to rebuild myself with more intention than I've ever had before. And that's what I want for you too. You don't have to predict the future. You just have to create enough space and structure so that if something does change, you're not scrambling to try to figure out, where do I go from here? Oh my gosh, I need a job. That desperation feeling that some people feel. It's that shift from feeling a feeling of powerlessness to being prepared, from being anxious to being more grounded, and from reactive to being more resilient. And that's the kind of energy that I'm hoping that you can build while we're here together and through this course. So when I started putting effort into prep, long before I knew I needed it, I it felt really small. So I might make one update to LinkedIn. I might tweak my resume with one little thing. A lot of times, so many people wait until they actually need the resume to go in and be like, oh crap, I got to redo this whole thing, or I've spent 2 jobs since I last updated it, that kind of thing. It might have been one little reaching out within my network. Those actions did add up. So when I did get to the point where I needed to work on my resume or needed to reach out to people on LinkedIn or whatever that might look like, I had already done those small steps. So it wasn't the overwhelm and the fear that was instilled in me because I had to do the whole thing or I had to look at it overall. So every action that you take from this course, no matter how small, think of it as a deposit into your future. You are building peace of mind and you're creating a cushion of clarity and confidence. That's not wasted time at all. Remember, it's the career security, it's career insurance. And I take the term and the concept of career security. Some people think that means I'm going to be in this job, I'm going to be with this company for a really long time. And that's not necessarily what that means. When we talk about career security, it's making sure that you are in a job that um, can be what you need it to be and that you think about your career overall and it shouldn't be just one role or one company that makes up your career. Maybe loyalty has kind of gone out the window for a lot of people and a lot of organizations. I found that out through some of my dissertation research and just talking to people in general. And doing those little steps is really going to pay off. Whether you end up facing a layoff, whether you make a pivot in your career and decide to do something else, go somewhere else, take a step down, climb up the corporate ladder, literal move, like anything like that. Um, any little action that you take is an investment in that career security for you. Let me take a drink here real quick. So, in order to make the most of this course, maybe you're somebody who likes to binge content, or maybe you like to process it solely. If you like to binge content, you may want to wait until you have a couple of sessions to be able to do that because I don't have all of them laid out now. I'm doing them as we go. This course is going to be really designed to meet you where you are. If you want to participate in the live sessions, you're more than welcome to. If the daytime doesn't work out or you're not comfortable being on a live Zoom session for the remaining sessions, you can listen to those in the portal when you're ready. This course is not a one size fits all model. It's really meant to support you, the pace that you need to go, the goals that you have, and what emotions that you have. Some people get completely overwhelmed in thinking about the possibility of could a change happen? Could I get laid off? What am I going to do from here? If you're here or you're listening to the replay, I just give you permission and please you give yourself permission that you're allowed to take what you need at the pace you need it, in alignment with who you are as you need it. In the full course, I'm going to walk you through things like reflection prompts, provide some checklists, some different tools and resources, and even some reframing your thoughts or your mindset. Some of these things I have found to be helpful even after I was impacted by the layoff. And some of these things have really helped me through my process of being laid off and what I was able to do from there. I don't want this course, much like the courses that I teach at the college level, to be 100% theory. I will give you some background insight and some insight that may be theory, may be from different people over time, naturally, because that's how I build some of this stuff. But I am very much about engaging you in any kind of hands on activity. And don't take this to mean that you're going to be separated into groups or breakouts or anything like that. Absolutely not for this course. But I want to give you different things like reflection or exercises or you could take this home and think about it, reflect on it, worksheets, things like that for you to practice put some of this insight and information into motion versus just thinking of it and trying to think for yourself, well, what do I do? This is nice, but what do I do from here? So that's going to be more in the full course and available there. So if you want access again to that full journey, reach out to me directly. I'll provide some information also at the end of this live session. So next, I know from personal experience how overwhelming this can feel when you're in it. So I want to remind you that this is not a race at all. You do not get a gold star for rushing through the end. The real magic is going to happen when you slow down, when you reflect, and you start to apply what you're learning. When I gave when I gave myself permission to take it slow, like a couple slides ago, we did that, take a deep breath and let it out. And when I started to do that and became more aware and more reflective, I actually moved forward faster because I was more intentional in the decisions that I was making. And the same can be true for you. Go at your own pace. Maybe you want to come back to the exercises when you're ready. Maybe it's a little too overwhelming at the time, or maybe the time is not right for you to do that. You can come back. The full course was built to give you space and not to pressure you that you need to get through this as quickly as possible or check off all of these boxes. So if you're someone who thrives on structure, on goals, on checking off all those boxes, I totally get it. I am wired that way too. That is me with the checklist going through. During my own career transition, I had to resist the urge to try to fix everything right away. And it was like, oh my gosh, within a week, within 2 weeks, like I need to have this, I need to do this, I need to do this. And I had to really stop, take that breath, and really start to reflect and think. And some of the things that I was thinking about was, do I want to do the same thing that I was doing? Did I enjoy that? What did I not enjoy about that? What did I enjoy about that? What other types of roles are there available about this? And I think immediately the response that you might have is, I need to do exactly what I've been doing. Like that's the way it's always been done, right? We've heard that many times in a corporate setting. But you don't have to. You can actually take a moment and think, is that where I want to go next? Is that what I want to do? Or does that look different? And for me, some of those that different were things that I did not even imagine. I had somebody send me in LinkedIn, hey, here's a job role I think you would be great at. I had met her at a conference and part of an association, and she's like, this would be really good. I know you're looking for a job. And for me, that may not have been one that as I was looking for a job would have come up in the searches that I was doing. But when I looked at it and I read through it, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is me. Like this does fit the bill. And I was able to apply for it and move forward. So, all of that to say, don't speed through this like another to do list. Don't speed through what you're going to do, you know, if or when something happens, and trying just to check the box. I encourage you to give yourself permission to sit with ideas, to think about them, and to not feel like you have to do 10 things right away. Your progress doesn't have to be fast for it to be powerful and for you to take action and do something that makes a difference. So here we go. So when I created this course, I made sure that I included tools and frameworks that are very flexible because no two people that have experienced layoffs or even changes in their careers do it in the same way. I know that from working with hundreds of individuals, mid-level professionals through career coaching, through dozens of individuals who have been laid off and are trying to figure out what's next for them. So you might be in technology, maybe you're in human resources, maybe manufacturing or education, and maybe you're facing something that's really uncertain or you're trying to recover from something that's happened. Either way, this isn't about taking my journey word for word exactly as it is, and it's more about adapting and discerning what are some of those things from what I have experienced and what I have learned from other people, and that you can take and bring those into your own world and what's going on for you. So all of the content in this course may not be for you. A majority may be for you. Only maybe small parts may feel like they relate to you. So you'll see the opportunity with it throughout the course, the full course. You can modify templates. You can reflect on things on your own industry, maybe how this plays out from that perspective, or even plan for some multiple possibilities. So I've worked with several coaching clients that have built out 2 or 3 different resumes based on 2 or 3 different types of roles that they would be really good at and that they could apply for. Because the last thing you want to do is use one base resume and spray it out and just with that spray and pray and hope that you get a job offer. Um, this course is about adapting it to your situation and giving you that freedom to prepare in the way that you need to. So you do not need to do and take everything and apply it to yourself. Again, that's the discernment. So I will tell you that when I was laid off, I wanted a clear answer and I wanted fast results. But what I learned, and this is sometimes can be painful, is that a meaningful career transformation typically happens in pieces and in layers, and it's not a single leap, it's a series of steps. And sometimes that can be why it takes some time to get there and figure out what's next. And that is okay. Every email that you send, every mindset shift that you have, every one of those little actions we talked about, um, and making sure that you're taking those is going to help you get to where you want to go. It's what is it? It's a marathon, not a sprint kind of thing. And it's not about perfection. It's about taking those steps and advancing forward in your journey and determining where is it you want to go, what do you want to do, and maybe you already know those things. And so that makes it a little faster of a journey for you. So even being here, listening to the session, this is a powerful step for you to take in your journey. You don't need perfection. You just need to make sure that you're in motion, that you're moving forward, and that's going to help you to create momentum. All right, if you're joining me after a little bit of time, go ahead. I think I could see the chat, hopefully. Um, this is a new tool I'm using here. So drop a hashtag live or hashtag replay in the chat or send me a message if you don't want to put it in the chat or the comments. Send me a message. Let me know that you're listening. Would love to know that and support you, whatever you might need. So this part starts really the actual beginning of session 1 of this training, which I'm providing for free to everyone, and I'm super excited about. So without further ado, let me jump in. So the things that we're going to talk about on this session are both the internal signals, so within your organization, within your industry, as well as some of the external signals. So things in the economy, in the environment, in political landscapes, legal landscapes, all of those types of things. And I'll share a little bit more about those and even how in my management courses we talk about looking at that external environment. So I could share that with you. So to start off, most layoffs show warning signs anywhere from 3 to 6 months before they happen. Some of you may or may not know there is the WARN Act, WARN. And if you look up WARN Act in your state, so WARN Act Ohio, or it could be the state where your organization is headquartered. I don't know all the fine rules around the WARN Act, but you can look up WARN Act notices. And by month, organizations that meet certain criteria, like they have a certain amount of people, have to report if they're laying off it's a certain percentage or certain number of people and report that. So some people get that notice ahead of time because they see, oh, this company and headquartered in this state said that they are going to be letting go 50 people in June. So that is something that you can look at. I wouldn't get too hardcore wrapped around it because your mind, again, we talked a little bit ago about spiraling, and your mind starts to go all of these different places. Well, who are those people? Who are those? Maybe it's 25. Who are those 25? What department is it? Who can I ask internally? Like all of those types of things. And so it may help you and be a step in getting you informed, but it could also, I would be cautious of it. So it's important as we talk about all of the warning signals in the rest of the session today, because by looking at some of these warning signs, yes, layoffs may not happen. The likelihood is probably a little higher with each of those warning signals that come up that it could happen. So what you want to do in thinking about these warning signs, and this isn't preparing like doom and gloom, it's making sure that you are getting prepared and that you're taking the time that you need. So the sooner you start to see some of these warning signs, whether internal or external, the sooner you're going to be able to start to prepare for what could be. So that if something happens, if you jump on a call that you thought was going to be a one on a Monday, and it ends up being you getting laid off, that you feel more prepared. Yes, you may be shocked. Yes, you may have some fear, but you've done some things to plan and prepare and be proactive. So you are ahead of the game more than a lot of other people. So there are three main types of warning signs that we're going to talk about in this internal signals section. So they are financial, operational, and cultural indicators. And this is going to reveal that there may be challenges, there's likely challenges within the company. So financial warning signs are going to be things like declining revenue, changes in profit margin. Maybe the stock price starts to go down little by little or all at once, it starts to go down. Operational warning signs could be things like there's hiring freezes. Maybe you're not renewing contracts for people or for systems or things like that. It could be reduced investment in new projects. So maybe you're not doing all the projects or they're scaling back on what you are doing on some different projects. Maybe there's changes to production and less that's going into production. So cultural warning signs, this could be if there's low employee morale, if there's increased turnover, more and more people leaving the organization, especially, and we'll talk here in just a moment about leaders. If you see a lot of this is mid-level leaders leaving the organization, or even executive leaders leaving the organization, changes in leadership, moving things around, trying to shake things up. So it's important to really pay attention to these different types of signals because this can help you to get ahead of potential layoffs and make sure that you're taking steps that are going to protect you. So this slide, I go into a little bit more detail on some of the financial red flags that can signal some trouble ahead for the company. So the first one here is it's typically if you have 3 or more consecutive quarters of missed financial targets. So this could indicate a concern that there's a downward trend in the performance of the company. So this is 3 or more consecutive quarters of missed financial targets. The second red flag I talk about here is cross-departmental cost-cutting measures. So this could be seeing layoffs in other departments, budget reductions, hearing about different projects that are cut or contractors that are not being brought back in, systems that are being done away with, or maybe minimizing what you're leveraging from a system versus everything that you did before. This could signal that the company is under some financial pressure and they're trying to figure out what to do and how to change this. Most organizations, most and many of the leaders I talked with in my own dissertation research were trying anything and everything they could to figure out how do we save the people? How do we save the people that are doing the job? What else can we cut? What else can we do away with? Can, anything like that so that you don't hit the people. But the truth is that the people are the biggest line item and that biggest budget for an organization. So a lot of times it ends up that you do have to impact that. So back to the slide, the third red flag is if there's any sudden freezes on spending or expenses. Maybe you're not allowed to spend like you used to. Maybe you need to cut back on travel. That's a big one for some corporations. You don't travel as much. Maybe you're not doing celebrations or get togethers as much, thinking about the money. In that case, recognition maybe kind of scaled back a little bit. There could be canceled projects, reduce different kinds of perks for the office. Maybe they can't do the annual Christmas party anymore and they have to cut back, or you just get a $5 coupon or $25 gift card or something like that versus like them throwing some big party or whatever that might be. So this is another signal that the company is really tightening its belt because that they're under potential financial strain, likely financial strain. So it's really important to watch for these early warning signs because they can provide some insight into the health of the financial health of the company itself. So let's move on to operational shifts. This is a picture I love from a photo shoot with Emily. um, I said, I want to show me being angry and thinking about even my own layoff, and trying to do angry when you're not so angry at that point is really hard. Um, but what this slide shows is some of the operational shifts that could happen. So you may see hiring freezes. Maybe things are still on the job board, but they're slowing down the hiring process. They're freezing and not making offers. Maybe they have done away with things that used to be on the job board. Recruiters have gone quiet. Maybe they've done away with some of the recruiters that they used to have. Companies may be making some time adjustments, so they might reduce hours, especially from a contractor's point of view, or maybe there's people who do flex hours or are part-time or more optional, and they don't have as many hours as maybe they used to. Companies may be asking employees to use up their vacation time. I've not heard so much about that, so I'd be interested if any of you have had that come up, but using some of their paid time off. There's also been a big push for tech adoption, so things like artificial intelligence and automation, and what are some solutions we can put into place, because the more that we create these efficiencies by these kinds of solutions, it's more likely that can we have less people to help run these solutions and the things that we need versus how many people we had before that had to look at that. So a lot of companies are looking at technology. How can that help them adapt? How can that save them money, time, those types of things? And finally, we're seeing work is being redistributed. Redistrib- Redistribution, kind of weird word to say. Weird word to say. Among remaining team members. And this is companies trying to do more with less. So if you, in your organization, somebody, say there's a team of 10 people and 2 people end up leaving. Maybe one leaves the company, one goes to another department. So you're down to 8. And instead of replacing those 2 people with other people, whether inside or outside the company was like, nope, you can't have those 2 people, like a natural attrition for the team. And so you have to take the work that those 10 people were doing, and it's either you figure out, okay, what's the things that are not high priority, not high urgency that we can just drop from the team. And most of the time it ends up not being what those 2 people were doing, right? Or if we can't drop any of the work, if all of the work genuinely feels important and urgent, then who's going to take more? How are we going to spread that out? What does that look like? And trying to figure out, and sometimes it's not fair as to who the people are and what levels they are within the team, within the organization, and that kind of thing. And that can lead to, by having to do that and redistrib- redistribute the work, it can lead to a lot of burnout for people. So whoever ends up having to bear, what's left and what's there, especially if you're a good worker, you're a high performer, it can lead to a lot of burnout. So those are some of the operational shifts. The next one I want to talk about is leadership and communication changes. So changes in leadership, whether again it's at executive level, it's a middle management level, typically those are the big ones that you see. Um, you may start to see some of the executive level meeting behind closed doors. Maybe they're making strategic decisions, or there's tension in the company and they're trying to figure out what do we do from here. There may be unexpected leadership turnover. So executives or like those mid-level managers may leave the company for something else. Maybe they switch into a different role. And any of those kind of changes should really like signal, put your ears up, like what's going on here, especially if you're not used to seeing so many happen as in the past, because it's a natural thing that that might happen, but several in a row, you start to think, what's going on here? Reorganizations with departments merging or changing in reporting structures. Often that happens before something big is going to happen. It could definitely be a signal, and maybe it's nothing. It's better to be prepared, right? Instead of panicking down the road. So pay attention to those. Any kind of decreased transparency, so not being as open as leaders used to be. If they're being very vague and very general, one thing I've heard and I've seen a lot is we're family, we're going to take care of family, that kind of thing. It can suggest that the organization may be having a tough time and they're trying to figure out how do we manage this messaging and how do we talk to people. Because even as a manager, like a frontline manager, sometimes, and this is for all managers really, there's some things that and you can't share with your people, and there's other things that you can, and sometimes you have to be very vague and general about it. So if you start to see that, it could be a trigger to think, what's going on here? Especially if you're seeing it more and more in those types of things. Oh, forgot to hit the button here. So private meetings, leadership turnover, reorgs, communication shifts. The last slide here in the internal signals, these are some personal impact signals that might indicate a change in your role or where you stand in an organization. And being excluded from meetings that you were in before, being left out of those, that they don't want your input anymore, like those kinds of things could be a signal. Having reduced responsibility. So if pieces of your work start getting taken away, some people are like, oh, this is really cool. Like I even talked to somebody who was laid off and the a couple months prior to getting the notice that she was getting laid off, they're like, oh, we're going to have Susie Q help with this project and we're going to have Johnny help with this project. And she was kind of like relieved, like, oh my gosh, they're finally listening to me that I need help and I have so much on my plate. What they were really doing is setting up so that they divided her work out. She only had a little bit left so that when they laid her off, they could figure out, do we get rid of this work or do we give it to somebody else later? So that sometimes is not always a great thing when they're starting to take your work and assigning to other people. Unusual HR activity is another one. Asset tagging is one. If you're seeing more and more employee surveys, if there's new recurring meetings that happen, especially managers in HR, sometimes that could be to talk about should there be changes in the organization. If managers are being more distant and there's less feedback, less talk, maybe it becomes more and more awkward to interact with some of those managers, that could signal that something's happening. So all of these signals, these internal signals that we talked about, are important to make sure that you're aware of. Again, this is not my doom and gloom message. It's prepare over panic. So these types of things are going to be an early warning sign that there's potential changes to your position or your influence within the company and what you do. So make sure that you're paying attention to those. So now I want to shift over to, checking the time here. I want to shift over to external signs. And to start with, the external industry and the economic environment has a significant impact on how organizations operate and how they plan for the future. It's really important for businesses to pay attention to what are some of those emerging signals and trends that come about in their industry and in that broader, more global economy. So the earlier that companies and individuals can recognize these signals, it allows individuals and companies to be more proactive in planning and decision making. So we are going to, let me go here. So this shows you some major downturns or bankruptcies here. I give some insight on this next slide here. So what we're seeing is not random. Bankruptcies and mass layoffs are part of external shifts that are happening in our business environment. I teach in my management class about frameworks like PESTEL, PESTEL analysis, and Porter's 5 forces. And these frameworks are where this really starts to come to life if we start to take pieces of these. So before I get into what these, downturns and bankruptcies really mean, I want to ground us and I want to share with you these two tools. And again, these are taught in my management class. I've also touched briefly on them in my marketing class. And these tools help to make sense of what's going on around us and why it matters, not just for companies, but for our jobs, our careers, and what we decide to do. So the first one I mentioned is the pestle analysis. It's PESTEL. You may also see it as PESTLE. The acronym stands for the same things regardless of what order those letters are in. But this is a way for individuals or organizations to look at that macro environment. What is the big picture? And these are things that businesses may not be able and likely can't control, but how are they going to respond to those types of things? So PESTLE actually stands for the P is political, the E is economic, S is sociocultural, T is technological, the second E is environmental, and the L is for legal. So PESTLE, I'll go through that again: political, economic, sociocultural, technological, environmental, and legal. So the PESTLE analysis, this framework, really gives us a high-level view of the world around the business. And it's not about, again, it's not about what the company control, but what it has to respond to. What are some of those things that are happening in that environment that it's in? Porter's Five Forces is another tool that can be used to understand the environment for the industry. This looks at industry level dynamics and how it impacts profitability and competition. So for Porter's Five Forces, it looks at the threat of new entrants. So how easy is it for new players to come and enter the industry? So if we think about an example of this is fast food. Every corner you see what a McDonald's, right? Or Starbucks might be like for coffee. And then there's new players that come in. So we have a Scooters Coffee. There a Big B. I think we counted 5 different places that you can get coffee. So in a way, it's easy for anybody who has this like coffee business to enter the market, right? What people's choices are may dictate whether they stay in that market for very long. So, but this is basically the threat of new entrants coming into that industry. There's also the bargaining power that suppliers have, that buyers have, the threat of are there substitutes or alternatives that people can choose. And with the coffee thing, maybe they're comfortable not having Starbucks. This coffee is just as good from McDonald's or wherever. And then the last one on Porter's Five Forces is industry rivalry. So how fierce is the competition amongst the existing players in the marketplace? So Porter's Five Forces is going to show us how competitive forces can push companies to shift their strategy, or if they're not able to adapt fast enough, they're going to have to exit the market and shut down entirely, or shut down that piece of what they were doing, maybe stay in one piece versus trying to stay, or one industry versus maybe they have several different arms into different industries. So when we talk about layoffs or bankruptcies, we are seeing in the pestle model, we're seeing economic and technological factors in full force. And what I mean by this is there's rising interest rates, there's inflation. Interest rates in some areas are starting to come down a little bit. Supply chain issues for sure. My students and I have talked a lot about the impact of the potential tariffs or tariffs that are out there. There's rapid shifts. Sorry, there's rapid shifts in the adoption of technology. How are we going to integrate artificial intelligence? How are we going to integrate automation to make things more efficient, more cost effective, things like that? These are things that are hitting businesses and they're impacting the jobs for those businesses. So layoffs in tech or retail are not isolated. They are going to shift the entire industry landscape. Sorry, let me adjust this. I think it's my glasses with these. Take these off for a moment. So with if we think about tech or retail layoffs, I mentioned they aren't isolated. So the threat of new entrants might drop as the barriers end up growing. Supplier and buyer power might increase, and industry rivalry shifts as players start to try to scramble to grab whatever market share they can. So these types of shifts are going to affect pricing, they're going to affect strategy, and they're going to impact workforce decisions. Who do we hire? How do we hire? Do we hire? Do we let go? Those types of things. So I don't want to go through. I have quite a few notes to talk about in here. but I know we're short on time. Okay. So some of my notes here at the bottom. So what do we do with this? Who cares? Why does it matter, right? I want you to know that just because you're busy in your role or your organization is busy, that doesn't mean you're safe. Just because you think or you are adding value in an organization doesn't mean you're safe. Sometimes that activity doesn't mean profitability. If your role depends on one client, a vendor, or a project, ask yourself what's going to happen if that vanishes, if that disappears. I want you to pay attention to small signals, if there's hiring freezes, if there's budget cuts, leadership changes, because those are often going to come when we talked about internal signals before any major announcements. And another thing that's helpful is these frameworks. If you've heard of SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, that's not just for businesses, but you can do that yourself. I've done that several times for myself and with clients, where we walk through, divide the paper 2 by 2, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Your strengths and weaknesses are internal. And so we think about your skills, your experience, what you bring to the table, what opportunities there might be, or I'm sorry, weaknesses. What are some things that you can work on, that you can improve? Maybe if you were to go somewhere else, what are some of those gaps where you would need to fill in to make sure that you have? Opportunities and threats are typically in the external environment, and thinking about what are the opportunities that could be outside of your organization, outside of where you are, maybe in the same industry, maybe not, and being open to what some of those different opportunities could be. And sometimes it's helpful for you not to say, okay, for me, what is this, and really like run out of ideas. Maybe it's bouncing it across a couple different people. Okay, based on what I do, what do you think might be other opportunities that I have? And not, they don't have to be specific. It could be thinking about different type of job roles overall. You can have that conversation with ChatGPT or any kind of AI, generative AI tool, and ask it, okay, based on these skills, these experience, these things that I know how to do, what might be the top 5 job roles? There's also a really great free career assessment called careerexplorer.com, and you take, I think it's 20 to 30 minutes typically. You can take that and it will spit out, here are some recommended job roles that you might be of interest. Here are some of the different skills or strengths that you bring to the table. And it's a really nice assessment of the information that it gives you. So typically when I have a client come to me and they're like, I'm not sure, I don't know if I want to be a project manager again, I don't know what else I could do. Like, I just don't know. This is all I've ever known. I will point them to that careerexplorer.com, have them take that, and then we have that conversation in a coaching call and kind of figure out what does this look like. Because it's not going to do you any help to update your resume, to update your LinkedIn, to start posting for jobs. If you don't have that clarity, that's the first step in my 4C framework, to have that clarity of what is it that you're looking for. And yes, that what is it could be multiple things. It could be a project manager role like you've always done. It could be product manager. It could be like several other different kinds of things. But until you have that awareness and that clarity, you're kind of really throwing a dart and hoping something sticks. So that SWOT analysis for yourself can be really helpful, just as it would be for a business. So all in all, to say, specific for the slide, is making sure that you prepare and that you don't panic. And this is, you heard this almost every slide I say. Preparing, planning, so you're not being afraid, being panicked. Yes, you're going to feel a little bit of that. But if you're taking these steps and you're working through this information and this course and some of the things I support you with here, then it's going to minimize some of that. And again, you're still going to have challenges. You're going to still have things that are going to pop up. You're still going to be hit. Um, and this is going to support you so that your bounce back of and your reaction that you have, you're going to have more of those proactive steps in place than being reactive and panicking and trying to figure out what next. So on to our next slide. This one, I know I don't have much time left, so I want to get through this. This slide really talks about consolidation happening across industries. It's happening within fintech. It's happening within airlines. We've seen a lot of this, different names like fintech and financial services. We've had Pagaya and Theorem. We've had Robinhood and Pluto, Capital One and Discover Financial Services. For airlines, we've had Alaska Airlines, Hawaiian Airlines. There was an acquisition. Alaska acquired Hawaiian. Boeing and Spirit Aerosystems had acquisition within there. So a lot of different things going on, and a lot of things, if we go back to that Porter's Five Forces and that framework, that plays into that. So if we take time as business leaders or as individuals and kind of look at some of this for the organization within the industry, what's going on, you're starting to see these signals and you can see them a lot earlier than if we just wait for something to happen, because by that time it's a little too late to be as proactive as possible, right? So the more we can plan and be ready. So consolidation definitely equals change. It may not happen overnight, but when companies start to combine jobs, culture, priorities, and processes, things change. A lot of time, mergers and acquisitions can sound very exciting, and leadership will often spin them as this is a great opportunity for us to grow. But what we don't talk about and what we don't hear a lot about is that behind every merged organizational chart is a spreadsheet of duplicated roles. And some of these may be shared services across the organizations, um, whatever that might be. And guess what happens to those roles? Well, you don't need duplication of all of that. That's not very efficient, right? And sometimes people don't have the skills to go to another area in the business. And sometimes organizations don't take the time or don't have the time to figure out what does that look like. It's easier to just do the cut and go from there. So if an organization is merging or acquiring or being acquired, be alert. It doesn't mean you're automatically at risk, but it does mean it's time to quietly start preparing and documenting your impact, clarifying your value, building your visibility outside of your current bubble, and making sure that you're building relationships, you're nurturing relationships, you're preparing those things that you need in case something happens. And you have that great foundation in place. So please think about those things. I'm going to skip through some of these. There have been regulatory changes that have happened over time, environmental rules, compliance related, data privacy, trade policy shifts, all of these to say that these kind of changes create challenges and opportunities. The people who are proactive are typically the ones that come out ahead. So use the knowledge. Stay curious about how your company is adjusting and how they're responding to these kinds of shifts, whatever might be happening. And then really to wrap up, this is where it comes together. So preparation isn't just a checklist. It's not, check the box, I'm good. It's really that mindset, that reflection. And remember, we talked about earlier, taking that breath, being reflective, being aware of what's going on. It's learning how to monitor what are some of these signals. How are you going to respond? And responding doesn't always mean publicly out loud. It could be responding by preparing, quietly preparing. How are you aligning yourself with where the world and your industry is headed? Maybe what are some of those skills that you need to look at and you need to maybe upskill in certain areas? So you don't have to live in fear to stay ahead. You just have to stay awake and alert to what are some of those things that are happening. So in this course, Pink Slip Prep School program, easier written than said, right? We are not just preparing for layoffs. I am helping you to build the skills, the strategies, and the resilience so that you can navigate whatever comes next and whatever that might look like. So I'll share this last slide with you, and I will drop in the comments after the session is over. The link, if you want more information or if you want to direct message me in any of the platforms, please feel free to do that. But Pink Slip Prep School, just some more information in here. We do have 6 more sessions. Those will be under the paid program aspect of it. So if you're interested in that, you will get clear, actionable steps to prepare you for job uncertainty and making sure that you're prepared and you plan and you don't panic. Um, Support and help with resume and LinkedIn refresh tips so you can stand out and look at how can we create the value that you bring to the table. How to read the signs inside, outside your company, which we really talked about a lot today. There's a lot of mindset coaching we're going to get into of instead of that fear-based, what if I get laid off? Oh my gosh, am I going to be laid off? Transitioning to not completely eliminating that fear, but saying, I'm ready if I do, or I have a plan, or I'm starting to get my ducks in a row, like those kinds of things. Also, if you take the option for the Career Clarity Circle membership, which this course is also a part of, if you're interested in that, there's community support in there. So again, plan, don't panic, and being prepared in case something happens is always the best step that you can take. And we also mentioned that any step is really a good step to make sure that you are gaining momentum. And hopefully, I hope that you don't have to worry about um, or that you don't get that call like I did and say your job is being eliminated. But you know what? If you do, being part of this program, being a part of what I provide here is just going to help you be more prepared and proactive and help you to figure out where do I go from here. And that can make a world of difference for you. So, with that, I thank you for listening, whether it was to pieces of this, whether it was to the whole thing. I hope you have a great day and message me if you need any more details. Thank you.